"What the hell are you doing in my son's room?" Alexander Kensington's voice thundered through the opulent Manhattan penthouse, his face twisted in rage as he burst in. There, on the edge of Jake's bed, sat Loretta Johnson, the black maid he'd hired weeks ago, a 45-year-old woman from Brooklyn, her hand gently holding the rebellious 16-year-old's as he finally opened up about his hidden pain. Jake, usually defiant and explosive, looked calmer than ever, his tears drying under her empathetic gaze. But Alexander saw red. "You're just the help. A black maid who doesn't know her place," he snarled, firing her on the spot in front of the staff, his words dripping with prejudice and power. Loretta stood stunned, the injustice burning, yet something unimaginable was about to unfold, a shocking truth from her past that would shatter his world and save them all. The sun had barely crested over the Brooklyn skyline, casting long shadows through the cracked blinds of Loretta Johnson's cramped apartment. She stirred her instant coffee with a bent spoon, the steam rising like a faint hope in the dim kitchen. At 45, her hands bore the calluses of endless scrubbing, each one a testament to survival. The mug warmed her palms, but it couldn't chase away the chill of the eviction notice taped to her fridge door, its red letters glaring like an accusation. Loretta set the cup down and glanced at the faded photo on the counter. Her son, Marcus, grinning toothily at age 8, his eyes bright with the kind of joy that now felt like a distant dream. 10 years since the illness took him. 10 years of hospital bills that swallowed her nursing career, forcing her into maid work just to keep the lights on. She traced his face with a finger, her chest tightening. Why him? Why not me? The thought echoed in her mind, a quiet storm she carried everywhere. She slipped into her uniform, a simple gray dress, starched crisp despite the fraying hem, and pinned her name tag on. Loretta Johnson, it read, as if that summed her up. But inside she was more, a woman who'd once soothed feverish children in pediatric wards, whispering stories until their fears melted away. Now, she cleaned strangers' homes, invisible in their eyes, her black skin often earning sidelong glances or curt commands. Just the help, they'd say, their voices laced with that unspoken divide. Grabbing her bucket of supplies, Loretta headed out, the door creaking behind her like a sigh. The subway rattled beneath her feet, packed with commuters avoiding eye contact. She stared at her reflection in the grimy window, lines etched around her eyes from nights spent worrying about rent, food, the endless grind. One more job, she told herself. Just get through today. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. The world saw her as expendable, a black woman from the projects, but her heart held a reservoir of patience, forged in loss. It was what kept her going, even when dignity felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Arriving at her first client's brownstone, Loretta knocked softly. The door swung open to Mrs. Hargrove, a harried white woman in yoga pants, already on her phone. Finally. "The kitchen's a mess. My kids had a play date." No hello, no eye contact. Loretta nodded, stepping inside with her bucket. The house smelled of spilled juice and privilege, toys scattered like afterthoughts. She started in the kitchen, kneeling to scrub sticky spots from the tile. Her knees ached, but she hummed softly. An old gospel tune her mother taught her, the melody weaving through the silence. Swing low, sweet chariot. It grounded her, a reminder of roots that ran deeper than this floor. As she worked, memories flickered. Marcus in his hospital bed, clutching her hand, his small voice asking if it had hurt forever. She'd lied then, saying no, just to see him smile. Now, that lie haunted her. If I couldn't save him, who can I save? Wiping down the counters, she overheard Mrs. Hargrove on a call. "Yeah, the maid's here. She's slow. "But what do you expect?" The words stung, but Loretta kept her face neutral, her movements deliberate. Slow? Try to be thorough. Inside, anger simmered. Not explosive, but a steady burn. She'd faced worse. Landlords hiking rent because people like you were risky. Job interviews ending with polite rejections that screamed bias. At 45, she wondered if this was it. Endless cycles of being undervalued, her empathy dismissed as weakness. Finishing up, she collected her pay. Cash, no receipt, as if she were a shadow. "See you next week," Mrs. Hargrove said, already closing the door. Loretta pocketed the bills, counting them on the stoop. Barely enough for groceries. Gotta find another gig, she thought, pulling out her phone to scan classifieds. One ad caught her eye. Live-in maid needed for Manhattan penthouse. Single father with teen son. Competitive pay. Her thumb hovered. Manhattan meant crossing bridges, entering a world of glass towers and cold stairs. But the pay, it could change things. On the walk to her next job, wind whipped through the streets, carrying the scent of street vendors' hot dogs. Loretta paused at a park bench, watching kids play, laughing, carefree. One boy, about Marcus's age when he got sick, tripped and skinned his knee. His mother rushed over, kissing it better. Loretta's eyes welled. I did that once. Now, I'm just cleaning up others' messes. She wiped her face, standing taller. No time for self-pity. Empathy wasn't a curse. It was her strength, even if the world tried to grind it down. Her second job was in a cramped apartment, elderly Mr. Ramirez wheezing as he let her in. "Loretta, me angel," he greeted, his smile genuine. She dusted his shelves, listening as he rambled about his grandchildren. "You're patient, like my late wife," he said, handing her an extra tip. Moments like this reminded her why she persisted. Small connections in a big, indifferent city. By evening, back in her apartment, Loretta collapsed onto the sagging couch. The photo of Marcus stared back. "What would you think of me now, baby?" She applied for the Manhattan job online, her resume sparse. Experienced cleaner, reliable, good with kids. No mention of her nursing past. It felt too raw, too buried under years of grief. As she hit submit, doubt crept in. They'll see my address, my face, and pass. But hope flickered, stubborn as her hum. Night fell, sirens wailing outside. Loretta lay in bed, staring at the ceiling cracks. Bills loomed like storm clouds. Society's gaze, judging her skin, her station, weighed heavy. Yet, in her core, a quiet resolve burned. She'd lost everything once, but she'd rebuilt, piece by piece. One day, someone will see me, she thought, drifting to sleep. Not as the maid, but as the woman who endures. The next morning, her phone buzzed. An interview request from Alexander Kensington. Her heart skipped. Manhattan. A chance. She ironed her best dress, steeling herself. Little did she know, this job would drag her into a whirlwind of pain, prejudice, and ultimately, unimaginable healing. Across the glittering expanse of the Hudson River, in a sleek Manhattan penthouse that pierced the sky like a shard of glass, Alexander Kensington slammed his fist on the mahogany desk. The impact rattled the crystal decanter, sending ripples through the amber scotch inside. At 50, he was a real estate tycoon who'd built an empire from nothing. Towering skyscrapers that bore his name, deals sealed with handshakes that felt like handcuffs. But tonight, his chiseled jaw clenched tighter than usual, his steel gray eyes narrowing at the email on his screen. Another therapist quitting. Unprofessional, it read. Your son's issues require more than I can provide. Alexander leaned back in his leather chair, the city lights twinkling mockingly through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Damn it, Jake, he thought, rubbing his temples. His 16-year-old son was a storm he couldn't control, skipping classes at his elite private school, blasting music to drown out conversations, and last week getting into a fight that left a bruise on his knuckle and a suspension notice on Alexander's desk. Since Rebecca's death 5 years ago, breast cancer, swift and merciless, the boy had unraveled. Alexander had thrown money at the problem. Nannies, tutors, shrinks. None lasted. They don't get it, he seethed inwardly. He's just acting out. Needs discipline, not coddling. He poured himself a drink, the liquid burning a path down his throat. Alexander's world was one of power. Boardrooms where he barked orders, subordinates who jumped at his word. Widowed and alone with Jake, he'd become even more rigid, his grief armored in arrogance. I built this life for us, he reminded himself, glancing at a framed photo of Rebecca, her smile frozen in time. But Jake's rebellion chipped away at that facade. The boy slammed doors, muttered insults like, "You don't care," and retreated to his room, a fortress of posters and chaos. Alexander responded with lectures, groundings, threats to cut off allowances, anything to reassert control. Pacing to the window, Alexander overlooked the ant-like figures below, his reflection superimposing over the city. Tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair impeccably styled, he looked every bit the mogul. But inside, doubt gnawed. What if it's me? The thought flickered, quickly extinguished. No, it was the help's fault. Always too soft, too intrusive. He'd fired the last caregiver for overstepping when she suggested family therapy. I don't need strangers meddling in my home. His prejudice simmered subtly. He preferred staff who knew their place, who didn't challenge his authority. A black maid from Brooklyn? Fine for cleaning, but watching Jake? That might push boundaries he wasn't ready to blur. His phone buzzed, a text from his assistant. Interview scheduled for tomorrow. Loretta Johnson. References check out. Alexander smirked faintly. The ad had been a last resort. He needed someone reliable, cheap, and unobtrusive. She'll tidy up, keep an eye on the kid, and stay out of my way. But deep down, he sensed the brewing storm. Jake's outbursts were escalating. Last night, he'd shattered a vase in rage, screaming about feeling trapped. Alexander had yelled back, his voice booming through the echoing halls. "Shape up, or I'll ship you to boarding school." The threat hung in the air, unresolved. Descending to the living room, Alexander found Jake sprawled on the couch, headphones blaring, scrolling his phone with deliberate indifference. The room was a mess. Takeout boxes, crumpled homework. "Clean this up," Alexander snapped. Jake rolled his eyes, yanking off the headphones. "Why? That's what you hire people for, right? Another disposable nanny?" The sarcasm cut, but Alexander bristled, his temper flaring. "Watch your tone. I'm doing everything for you." Jake snorted, standing abruptly. "Yeah, everything except listening." He stormed off, the door slam vibrating the walls. Alexander sank into an armchair, exhaling sharply. He's just like his mother. Stubborn? But Rebecca had softened him once, her gentle touch balancing his drive. Now, alone, he defaulted to control, his arrogance a shield against vulnerability. Business thrived. Another multi-million-dollar deal closed today. But home? It was fracturing. He scrolled through more resumes, dismissing them one by one. This Loretta better work out, he thought, an edge of desperation creeping in. Little did he know, hiring her would ignite a conflict that exposed his flaws, his biases, and the fragile heart beneath his empire. The penthouse felt cavernous, empty despite its luxury. Marble floors gleamed under recessed lights, abstract art hung on walls like silent judges. Alexander poured another scotch, the glass clinking against his wedding ring. Still worn, a ghost of what was. I can't fail him, too. But failure loomed, unspoken. Jake's room light flickered upstairs, the boy probably stewing in silence. Alexander ignored it, burying himself in work emails. Tomorrow's interview will be quick, clinical. Hire her, set rules, move on. Yet, in the quiet, a tension built, like the calm before a deal went south. He had no idea that this unassuming maid would soon force him to confront the man in the mirror, unraveling the carefully constructed walls around his broken family. The elevator hummed smoothly as it ascended to the penthouse, the mirrored walls reflecting Loretta's composed face back at her. She adjusted her uniform one last time, the gray fabric feeling like armor against the unknown. This could be a fresh start, she thought, her bucket of cleaning supplies swinging lightly in her hand. The door slid open with a soft chime, revealing an expanse of marble and glass that screamed wealth, far removed from her Brooklyn walk-up. Alexander Kensington stood there, arms crossed, his watch glinting under the recessed lights. "You're late," he said flatly, though she was exactly on time. No handshake, no welcome, just a curt nod toward the interior. "Kitchen first, then the boys' room. Stay out of my office." Loretta nodded, her voice steady. "Yes, sir. I'll get right to it." She stepped inside, the air cool and sterile, scented with faint cologne and something sharper. Tension. Jake was nowhere in sight, but she could hear muffled bass thumping from upstairs, like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Alexander disappeared into his study without another word, the door clicking shut like a barrier. "All right, Loretta. Focus," she coached herself, rolling up her sleeves. The kitchen was a chef's dream. Granite counters, stainless steel appliances, but cluttered with takeout remnants and half-empty glasses. She dove in, scrubbing with methodical strokes, her mind wandering to Marcus. He'd love this view, she imagined, glancing at the city sprawl beyond the windows. But the pang hit hard, and she pushed it down, humming softly to fill the silence. Hours ticked by. Loretta moved to the living room, dusting shelves lined with awards, plaques for Deal of the Year, photos of Alexander shaking hands with suited men. No family pictures, though. Not one. Hiding the cracks, she mused, wiping a fingerprint from a frame. Upstairs, the music grew louder as she approached Jake's room. She knocked gently. "Mr. Jake, I'm here to clean." The door cracked open, revealing a tousled-haired teen in oversized headphones, his eyes red-rimmed and defiant. "Whatever," he muttered, slumping back onto his bed amid a sea of clothes and notebooks. Loretta entered carefully, picking up discarded items. "Rough day?" she asked lightly, not prying, just offering an ear. Jake paused his music, eyeing her suspiciously. "You don't have to pretend to care. Dad hires people like you to shut me up." His words carried teenage venom, but underneath, Loretta sensed the hurt, the isolation. She knelt to sort laundry, her voice soft. "I don't pretend, honey. I lost my own boy years back. Know what empty feels like." Jake's shoulders tensed, then relaxed a fraction. He didn't respond, but he didn't kick her out either. As she worked, he fidgeted, finally blurting, "School sucks. Everyone expects me to be like him, perfect." Loretta nodded, folding a shirt. "Perfect's a heavy load. Sometimes it's okay to just be." For the first time, Jake looked at her. Really looked, his guard cracking just a sliver. By late afternoon, the penthouse gleamed. Loretta was in Jake's room, straightening his desk, when the boy crumpled suddenly, burying his face in his hands. "I miss her," he whispered, voice breaking. "Mom, Dad acts like she's erased." Loretta hesitated, then sat on the bed's edge. Carefully, respectfully, she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Grief's like that. Hits when you least expect." Jake leaned in, sobs muffled, his tough facade shattering. She held space for him, whispering, It's all right to feel it. You're not alone. In that moment, the room felt smaller, warmer, a rare bubble of trust. The front door slammed downstairs. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Alexander burst in, his face a mask of fury, briefcase still clutched. "What the hell is going on here?" he bellowed, eyes locking on Loretta's hand on Jake's arm. Jake jerked back, wiping his eyes. But Alexander advanced, veins bulging in his neck. "You're in my son's room? Touching him? Who do you think you are?" Loretta stood slowly, her heart pounding but her posture straight. "He was upset, sir. I was just nothing." Alexander cut her off, his voice echoing off the walls. He turned to the hallway, where a couple of staff, a cook and a driver, had gathered, drawn by the noise. This woman thinks she can play therapist, a black maid from the projects, overstepping like she owns the place. The words hung heavy, laced with disdain, his finger jabbing accusatorily. The staff shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting away. But no one intervened. Jake stammered. "Dad, she was helping." But Alexander silenced him with a glare. "You're fired," he snarled at Loretta, yanking out his wallet and thrusting bills at her. "Take this and get out. Don't come back, or I'll make sure you never work in this city again." His tone dripped with power, the public humiliation deliberate, as if to assert dominance before witnesses. Loretta's cheeks burned, not from tears, she wouldn't give him that, but from the raw sting of being reduced to a stereotype, just the help. Black Maid. The labels echoed in her mind, a familiar wound reopened. She gathered her things with trembling hands, refusing to meet the staff's pitying gazes. Jake's eyes pleaded silently, but she managed a small nod to him. "Take care, honey." As she walked out, Alexander's voice followed. "And tell your kind to know their limits." The elevator doors closed, sealing her in solitude, the descent feeling like a fall from grace. Outside, the Manhattan streets buzzed indifferently, but inside, rage and resolve churned. He doesn't know me, she thought, clutching the crumpled bills. But that boy, he needs someone. The injustice festered, a spark that would soon ignite something unimaginable. The subway doors hissed shut behind Loretta, sealing her in with the rumble of the tracks and the indifferent stares of strangers. She clutched her cleaning bucket like a lifeline, the crumpled bills from Alexander burning a hole in her pocket. Her reflection wavered in the dark window, eyes steady, jaw set. But inside, a whirlwind churned. He didn't even let me explain. The words replayed. Black Maid. Know your place. They sliced deeper than any physical blow, echoing the dismissal she'd endured for years. But she didn't crumble. Not here. Not in front of the world. Instead, she straightened her shoulders, drawing on the quiet strength that had carried her through Marcus's final days. Cry later, she told herself. Survive now. Back in Brooklyn, the apartment door clicked open to stale air and stacked bills on the table. Loretta set her things down carefully, as if any sudden move might shatter her composure. She sank into the couch, the fabric worn thin from countless evenings like this. Her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded the money. Enough for a week's groceries, maybe rent if she stretched it. Fired again. For helping a kid. Anger flickered, hot and brief, but it cooled into resolve. She wouldn't beg for the job back. No, that wasn't her way. But Jake's face haunted her, the vulnerability in his eyes, the way he'd clung to her words like a drowning boy to a rope, that child screaming for help, and his daddy's too blind to see. She rose, pacing the small living room, her footsteps muffled on the threadbare rug. The photo of Marcus caught her eye, his grin a silent encouragement. You'd tell me to fight, baby. Loretta grabbed her phone, scrolling through contacts until she found Ramon, the doorman at the Kensington building, an old acquaintance from church. Hey, "It's Loretta," she said when he answered, her voice even. "That boy, Jake, keep an eye, will you? Let me know if things get worse." Ramon hesitated, then agreed, his tone sympathetic. "Saw what happened. Rough. I'll watch." Hanging up, she felt a spark of agency. She wasn't done. Not yet. The next morning dawned gray, rain pattering against the window like insistent fingers. Loretta dressed for job hunting, her best blouse, pressed slacks, ignoring the ache in her chest. Eviction loomed closer. She needed work fast. At the local diner, she sipped cheap coffee, scanning ads on her phone. Cleaner wanted nanny position. Each one blurred into the next. They all see the same thing. Black, middle-aged, desperate. But as she applied, her mind drifted back to Jake. Signs she'd spotted as a nurse. The fidgeting, the avoidance, the explosive moods. Anxiety. Maybe worse. Inherited, if his mother's death was any clue. I could have helped, she thought. Frustration bubbling. If that man hadn't exploded. Days blurred into a routine of survival. Loretta picked up odd jobs, scrubbing offices after hours, folding laundry for neighbors. Her hands raw from bleach, she moved with mechanical grace, but her thoughts were vigilant. Ramon's updates came sporadically. Texts about Jake slamming doors, skipping school, Alexander yelling into the phone. "Kids spiraling," one read. Loretta's heart twisted. She observed from afar, piecing together the puzzle. A quick search on her phone, public records, news clippings, revealed Alexander's wife had died of cancer. Jake, just 11 then. Grief untreated festers, she knew from her own scars. But intervening? Risky. He'd call the cops on me for stalking. Still, she couldn't unplug. Empathy wasn't a switch, it was her wiring. One evening, after a grueling shift, Loretta stopped at the community center, a place she'd volunteered before hard times hit. Kids milled about, laughing over art projects. She lingered in the doorway, watching a teen boy sketch angrily, his lines jagged. It reminded her of Jake. "Tough day?" she asked softly, approaching. The boy shrugged, but opened up after a moment, about feeling invisible at home. Loretta listened, her presence a balm. This is what I do best, she realized, a quiet power stirring. Leaving, she felt lighter, her role as hero emerging not in grand gestures, but in this watchful patience. Nights were harder. Alone in bed, the humiliation replayed, Alexander's finger jabbing, the staff's averted eyes. Public shaming, like I'm nothing. Tears came then, hot and silent, soaking her pillow. But with dawn she wiped them away, channeling the pain into purpose. Another text from Ramon. Jake got in a fight at school. Suspended. The boss is furious. Loretta's fingers hovered over her phone. I should stay out. But she couldn't. She began noting patterns. Jake's outbursts aligning with anniversaries of his mother's death, his isolation screaming undiagnosed anxiety. Her nursing instincts kicked in, observing like a shadow guardian. If no one else sees him, I will. A week later, jobless and dipping into meager savings, Loretta sat on a park bench near the river, Manhattan's skyline taunting across the water. Wind tugged at her scarf as she watched families stroll by, fathers hoisting kids on shoulders, mothers laughing. Envy pricked, but so did determination. That boy needs a lifeline. She pulled out a notebook, jotting down symptoms, possible resources. It wasn't meddling, it was preparation. If fate crossed their paths again, she'd be ready. Her phone buzzed. Another update. Jake locked himself in. Won't come out. Loretta's grip tightened. The hero in her stirred, observing, waiting for the moment to act. Hold on, child. Someone's watching. As bills mounted and isolation crept in, Loretta's resolve hardened. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a sentinel. Friends urged her to forget, That rich man's not worth it. But she shook her head, eyes distant. It's not about him. It's about the boy. In quiet moments, she practiced responses, steeling for confrontation. The injustice fueled her, transforming hurt into vigilance. They think they broke me, she thought, standing taller. But I'm just getting started. Alexander Kensington stormed through the penthouse, the echo of the slammed door still vibrating in his chest. He flung his briefcase onto the couch, papers scattering like accusations. That woman had nerve, he fumed, pouring a stiff scotch with a clink of ice that sounded like breaking resolve. His reflection in the window glared back, disheveled tie, furrowed brow. A man unaccustomed to being challenged, even indirectly. Jake had retreated to his room, the boy's muffled sobs a distant irritant Alexander chose to ignore. He'll toughen up. But the silence gnawed, amplifying his rage. He grabbed his phone, thumbs flying across the screen. A quick post on his private social circle. A network of fellow tycoons and influencers. Dealt with unreliable staff today. Some people forget their role. Lesson: hire carefully. He hit send, a smug curl to his lips. Likes trickled in immediately, thumbs up from peers who'd never question his judgment. The arrogance swelled, a familiar high. Alexander paced, replaying the scene. Loretta's calm defiance, her hand on Jake's shoulder. Intrusive. Unprofessional. He dialed his assistant, voice clipped. Blacklist that maid, Loretta Johnson. Make sure no one in our circles hires her. Spread the word. Unreliable. Oversteps boundaries. The assistant murmured agreement, but Alexander barely heard, already envisioning the ripple effect. In his world, reputation was currency, and he'd just devalued hers. She'll learn, he thought, a flicker of satisfaction cutting through the unease. But beneath it, doubt whispered. Jake's plea. She was helping. He shoved it down, pouring another drink. Vulnerability. Not in his playbook. The next morning, sunlight sliced through the blinds like judgment. Alexander adjusted his cufflinks in the mirror, practicing his boardroom smile. Jake shuffled into the kitchen, eyes puffy, avoiding eye contact. Morning, Alexander said gruffly, sliding a plate of toast across the counter. Jake poked at it, mumbling. Why'd you fire her? She listened. Alexander's fork paused midair. Listened? She's the help, not a shrink. You need discipline, not hand-holding. His tone sharpened, laced with condescension. Jake's face hardened, and he pushed the plate away, storming out. Alexander sighed, but instead of reflection, he doubled down. He's soft because of people like her. He called a new agency. Send someone today, strict, no nonsense, and make sure they're professional. The word hung, implicit bias unspoken. By afternoon, the new caregiver arrived, a stern woman in her 60s, resume thick with credentials. Alexander briefed her curtly. Clean. Watch the boy. Report to me. No chit-chat. She nodded briskly, but as she entered Jake's room, shouts erupted. Get out! You're not her! Jake hurled a book, the thud echoing. The woman fled, pale. Alexander burst in, grabbing Jake's arm. Enough! You're embarrassing me! Jake wrenched free, eyes blazing. You're the embarrassment, firing the one person who cared. Alexander's face flushed. Cared? She's a maid. He fired the new hire on the spot, her protests ignored. Incompetent, he barked, slamming the door behind her. Alone, he texted his golf buddies. Another flop. These agencies send amateurs. Stick to the elite. Replies poured in. Laughs, agreements, feeding his ego. Emboldened, Alexander's Ngao man spilled into the evening. At a high society dinner in a midtown club, crystal chandeliers casting golden halos, he regaled his table with the story. Caught the maid playing mommy in my son's room. Fired her faster than a bad investment. Laughter rippled, glasses clinking. A fellow millionaire leaned in. These types always push limits. Good riddance. Alexander nodded, his voice booming. Exactly. Know your place, or out you go. He didn't mention Jake's tears, the boy's worsening isolation. Instead, he ordered another round, basking in the validation. I'm right. Always am. But as the night wore on, his phone buzzed. School email. Jake suspended for fighting. Alexander's grip tightened on his glass. His fault. I need tougher love. Back home, the penthouse felt colder. Alexander confronted Jake in the living room, the boy curled on the couch, hood up. Suspended? What were you thinking? Jake shot up. Thinking? Like you do? You fire everyone who tries. Alexander loomed closer, voice rising. I am incompetent. That maid was a liability, probably after money. The lie slipped out, defensive. Jake's eyes widened. You're a liar! She helped! Alexander's hand slammed the table. Watch it, or you'll be shipped to boarding school tomorrow. The threat landed heavy, Jake flinching but defiant. He retreated, door slamming. Alexander stood alone, chest heaving, but instead of remorse, he rationalized. He'll thank me later. He posted again, vaguely. Parenting teens. Firm hand wins. No room for weakness. More likes, more fuel. Days blurred. Alexander's actions escalating. He interviewed more staff, each dismissed quicker. Too chatty, too soft. I need control, he snapped at one. Whispers spread in his circles. Kensington's on a firing spree. He reveled in it. Arrogance peaking at a business lunch. My home runs like my empire. Efficient, no excuses. Colleagues nodded, but one arched a brow. And your son? Alexander waved it off. Phase, he'll snap out of it. Inside, cracks formed. Sleepless nights. Jake's door always locked. But he buried it, hiring a private investigator subtly. Check that ex-maid. Make sure she's not talking. Paranoia crept, his power twisting into overreach. One night, scotch in hand, Alexander scrolled responses to his posts. Admiration from peers. See? I'm handling it. But a text from the school flashed. Jake absent again. Anger surged. He pounded on Jake's door. Open up! Silence. Finally, Jake cracked it, face pale. Leave me alone, Alexander shoved in. Alone? You're the problem. Words flew. Accusations. Threats. Jake recoiled, whispering, You're just like before Mom died. Cold. Alexander froze, then exploded. Don't bring her into this, he stormed out, heart racing, but arrogance armored him. He's wrong. I know best. His Nagao man blinded him, actions spiraling. More posts, more firings, Jake withdrawing further. Alexander didn't see the storm building, his empire of control cracking, ripe for collapse. They all bend to me, he thought, staring at the city lights. But in the shadows, consequences loomed. Rain lashed against Loretta's apartment window like accusing fingers, the storm outside mirroring the one brewing in her chest. She paced the narrow kitchen, the eviction notice now crumpled in her fist, its deadline glaring. 3 days. Bill scattered the table. Electric, water, phone. All stamped final notice in bold red. Her savings jar sat empty on the counter, coins long spent on bus fares for fruitless job interviews. How did it come to this, she wondered, sinking into a chair that creaked under her weight. The firing replayed in her mind. Alexander's sneer, the staff's silent stares. It wasn't just the job, it was the humiliation, the way his words had stripped her bare, reducing her to a stereotype. Now, doors slammed in her face, agencies whispering, Heard about the Kensington incident. Sorry, position filled. Her phone buzzed. Another rejection email. We appreciate your application, but... Loretta deleted it, her fingers trembling. Blacklisted. That man's reach is long. Ramon's texts piled up. Jake skipped school again. Boss yelling nonstop. She scrolled through them, heart twisting. Last night. Kid locked in room. Heard crashing. Loretta's breath caught. Signs of escalation. Self-harm risks. Isolation deepening. As a nurse, she'd seen it before. Untreated anxiety turning inward. Explosive. I should have said more, she berated herself, staring at Marcus's photo. His eyes seemed to plead. Help him, Mom. But how? Broke? Shunned? She was cornered. The landlord knocked that afternoon, his voice gruff through the door. Rent her out, Johnson. No extensions. Loretta opened it a crack, her face composed despite the knot in her stomach. Working on it, she said, voice steady. He snorted. Heard you got canned from that fancy gig. Trouble follows some folks. The door shut, leaving her in silence. She leaned against it, sliding down, knees to chest. Tears came hot and fast now, soaking her sleeves. Drowned in my own storm. Empathy for Jake warred with survival. Feed herself or fret over a stranger's son. But the boy's face haunted her, his vulnerability a mirror to Marcus's final months. Can't save everyone, she thought, wiping her face. Yet inaction gnawed deeper than hunger. Evening brought desperation. Loretta rifled through cupboards, canned soup, stale bread. Dinner simmered on the stove, but her appetite fled. She sat at the table, notebook open, jotting Jake's symptoms. Panic breaths, avoidance, rage bursts. Cross-referencing with old nursing texts she'd kept hidden in a box under the bed. Dusty volumes on child psychology. Detruian anxiety, she murmured, underlining. Rebecca Kensington's obituary popped up on her phone search. Cancer, but hints of mental health struggles. Passed it down. And that fool father's making it worse. Frustration boiled, her fist clenching the pen until it snapped. Ink stained her palm, black like the cloud over her life. A call from a friend broke the quiet. Sonia from church. Heard about the job. You okay? Loretta forced a laugh. Hanging on. But Sonia pressed. That rich guy's bad-mouthing you. Agencies are scared off. The words landed like a punch. Loretta's grip tightened on the phone. He's ruining me. After hanging up, she stared at the wall, mind racing. Job apps rejected, savings gone, eviction ticking. Road's end. She stood abruptly, grabbing her coat. A walk to clear her head, rain be damned. Street slick, puddles reflecting neon signs. Help wanted. Flickering mockingly in windows. She paused at a bridge overlook. Manhattan's lights taunting across the water. His world shines. Mine dims. Back home, soaked and shivering, another text from Ramon. Jake's bad tonight. Talking crazy stuff. The boss called security. Loretta's heart hammered. Self-harm. Visions flashed. Jake on the edge. Alone. Her nursing oath echoed. Do no harm but prevent it. But intervening meant facing Alexander, risking arrest for trespassing. Drowned either way. She collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling cracks. Sleep evaded, replaced by nightmares. Marcus slipping away, Jake following. Dawn broke gray, her eyes bloodshot. The landlord's note under the door. Tomorrow or locks changed. Pressure crushed. Financial ruin, emotional toll. The boy's peril. Pushed to the wall. Mid-morning, desperation peaked. Loretta dressed hurriedly, pocketing her notebook. Can't watch from the shadows anymore. She headed to the subway, resolving hardening with each step. Rain pounded overhead as the train rattled toward Manhattan. Confront him? Beg? Doubt clawed, but Jake's imagined cries drowned it. At the building, Ramon spotted her in the lobby, eyes wide. Loretta, he's upstairs, raging. She nodded, stealing. Gotta try. But security blocked the elevator. No entry, Mr. Kensington's orders. Humiliation flared anew, faces turning. Trapped. She turned away, fists balled, the world closing in. Back on the street, rain mixed with tears. Done then, nowhere left. That night, the storm hit its climax. Power flickered, her apartment dark. Loretta huddled under a blanket, phone glowing with Ramon's urgent message. Jake's on the roof, in the rain. Looks bad. Her breath stopped. The edge, eviction forgotten, bills irrelevant. She grabbed her keys, bolting into the torrent. No more observing. Time to act. The subway blurred by, her mind a whirlwind. If I don't, who will? Arriving at the tower, she pushed past security, heart pounding. Up the stairs, wind howling. On the roof, Jake teetered near the ledge, soaked and shattered. Alexander below, frozen. Loretta approached, voice cutting the gale. Jake, honey, step back. The tension snapped, her road's end becoming their turning point. But in that moment, she was cornered no more. She was the storm's eye. Wind howled through the rooftop access door as Loretta burst onto the slick surface, rain pounding like 1,000 accusations. Her coat clung heavy, soaked through, but her eyes locked on the figure teetering near the ledge. Jake, his hoodie plastered to his frame, fists clenched against the gale. Jake, honey, step back, she shouted, voice cutting the storm sharper than lightning. Below, in the doorway, Alexander froze, his face a mask of shock, water streaming down his cheeks. Tears or rain, impossible to tell. Security lingered behind him, radios crackling, but no one moved. The city lights blurred below, a dizzying drop that mirrored the chaos. Loretta advanced slowly, hands raised, palms open like an offering. One wrong word, and he's gone, she thought, heart slamming against her ribs. Jake's head whipped toward her, eyes wild, red-rimmed. You? What are you doing here? His voice cracked, a mix of fury and fragile hope. Rain matted his hair, dripping into his collar, but he didn't budge from the edge, sneakers inches from oblivion. Go away. Everyone leaves anyway. Alexander started forward, but Loretta shot him a glare that halted him mid-step. Not your show now, her eyes said. She inched closer to Jake, the wind whipping her scarf like a flag of surrender. I'm not leaving, baby. Not this time. Alexander's voice boomed from behind, laced with desperation. Get down, son. This isn't you. But Jake laughed bitterly, a hollow sound swallowed by thunder. Isn't it me? You made me this. Firing her, yelling, pretending Mom never existed. He swayed, gravel crunching underfoot, the drop yawning below. Loretta's breath hitched, visions of Marcus's hospital bed flashing, his small hand slipping from hers. Not again. She knelt slightly, eye level with the boy, ignoring the puddle soaking her knees. Jake, look at me. I lost my boy, too. Marcus. Illness took him slow, and I held him till the end. But you're fighting to stay. Don't let the pain win. Jake's shoulders shook, sobs mixing with rain. It hurts, all the time, like I'm breaking. Loretta nodded, voice steady as a heartbeat. I know. The panic, the hiding it. It's eating you, but you're stronger than it. Alexander edged closer, his face paling. What are you talking about? Loretta didn't turn her focus laser on Jake. Step back, honey. For me. Slowly, agonizingly, Jake shifted, one foot, then the other, away from the edge. He collapsed into her arms, body racked with tremors. Loretta held him tight, murmuring, That's it. You're safe. Security rushed forward then, blankets ready, but she waved them off gently. Alexander approached, his designer shoes squelching in puddles, facing a storm of confusion and guilt. How did you know it was coming? His voice cracked, the tycoon's armor fracturing. Loretta stood, supporting Jake's weight, her eyes meeting Alexander's, unflinching, fierce. Because I've been watching, from the shadows you pushed me into. Jake clung to her, whispering, "Don't go." Alexander's hands trembled as he reached out but pulled back. "You had no right," Loretta cut him off, voice rising above the fading thunder. "Right? You fired me for comforting him, shamed me in front of everyone, called me just a black maid. But you don't know me, Mr. Kensington." The rooftop felt smaller now. The city hushed as if listening. Loretta's breath steadied, the moment ripe. "I wasn't always a maid. I was a pediatric nurse, certified, top of my class, specialized in kids with anxiety trauma. Lost my license after Marcus died. Couldn't pay the renewals. Grief swallowed me." Alexander staggered, rain masking his widening eyes. "Nurse? But your resume." She nodded, pulling a faded ID badge from her pocket, her old hospital photo. Younger, smiling. Buried it. Too painful. But I saw the signs in Jake from day one. The outbursts masking panic attacks, the isolation. It's genetic, from your wife. She struggled too, didn't she? Depression, anxiety. It's in the obits, the whispers. Alexander's face crumpled, knees buckling as he sank to the wet concrete. Rebecca. She hid it. Pills, therapy in secret. I thought it was a weakness. His voice broke, hands covering his face. Jake pulled away slightly, staring at his father. "You knew? And did nothing?" Loretta knelt beside Alexander, her tone firm but not unkind. "He was protecting you, hiding his symptoms so you wouldn't see him as broken. But ignoring it, that's what pushed him here." Lightning flashed, illuminating Alexander's tears. I thought control would fix it. Fired everyone who got close." Loretta's eyes softened. "Including me. But empathy isn't weakness. It's the cure." Jake shivered, clutching Loretta's arm. "She gets it, Dad. Listen." Alexander looked up, shattered. "How do I fix this?" Loretta helped him stand, rain easing to a drizzle. "Start by listening. Therapy, for all of you. And apologize. Not just words. Actions." Security guided Jake inside, paramedics waiting below. Alexander lingered, voice hoarse. "You saved him." Loretta shook her head. "He saved himself. I just shone the light." As they descended, the shock settled. Alexander's world upended, his arrogance pierced by truth. Loretta walked taller, the hero emerging not in triumph, but in quiet revelation. The storm cleared, but the real healing was just beginning. The rooftop door clanged shut behind them, sealing out the storm's last gasps as paramedics swarmed the penthouse lobby. Jake huddled under a blanket on a stretcher, his shivers easing as medics checked his vitals, stable but shaken. Loretta stood nearby, her wet clothes dripping onto the marble floor, forming small puddles that mirrored the chaos above. Alexander hovered, his suit sodden and rumpled, the tycoon's polish washed away. His hands shook as he signed forms, voice muted when addressing the EMTs. "Take care of him," he murmured, eyes flicking to Jake with a raw vulnerability that looked foreign on his face. Security milled about, radios quiet now, the immediate crisis averted, but tension thick as fog. Alexander turned to Loretta, his posture deflated, the arrogance that had defined him crumbling like wet sand. I don't know what to say." His voice cracked, barely audible over the hum of activity. She met his gaze, unflinching, her own exhaustion etched in the lines around her eyes. "Start with the truth," she said softly, crossing her arms. Not in defense, but to steady herself. Paramedics wheeled Jake toward the ambulance outside, the boy glancing back at her with grateful eyes. "Go with him," Loretta urged Alexander. "He needs you now." Alexander nodded numbly, following like a man in a daze, his empire's weight suddenly irrelevant. In the hospital waiting room hours later, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows. Alexander sat rigid in a plastic chair, staring at his hands, still trembling, knuckles white. Doctors emerged, updating. Anxiety attack, exacerbated by stress. He'll be okay, but therapy's crucial. Alexander's head bowed, the words landing like verdicts. My fault. The realization hit. Sharp and unrelenting. He'd built towers, closed deals worth millions, but couldn't see his son's breaking point. Blinded by pride. Nurses whispered nearby, recognizing him from tabloids, the mogul reduced to a father in crisis. Shame burned, hotter than any boardroom defeat. Loretta arrived soon after, having changed into dry clothes from her bag, simple jeans and a sweater, her presence a quiet anchor. Alexander rose, words tumbling out. You were right. About everything. Rebecca. She suffered in silence. I pushed her to tough it out. And Jake. His voice faltered, eyes welling. I fired you for seeing what I wouldn't. Loretta listened, her expression softening but firm. It wasn't just firing. You shamed me, publicly, called me names that cut deep. He winced, nodding. I was wrong, prejudiced, arrogant. The admission hung, raw and unfiltered. He pulled out his phone, fingers flying. A public post. Tonight, I almost lost my son. Thanks to Loretta Johnson, a hero who saw what I couldn't. I was blind, biased. She saved us. Apologies aren't enough, but it's a start. He hit send, the screen lighting his face with vulnerability. Notifications buzzed, shock from followers, but he ignored them. The next morning, headlines flickered on screens. Tycoon credits fired Maid for saving son's life. Calls flooded. Reporters, colleagues, agencies retracting blacklists. Alexander fielded them wearily, his usual bark gone. No comment beyond gratitude, he said, hanging up. In Jake's room, the boy slept peacefully under monitors, IV dripping steadily. Alexander sat vigil, holding his son's hand for the first time in years, gentle, tentative. I almost broke him. Regret coiled tight, forcing reflection. He canceled meetings, delegated deals, his empire on pause. Friends texted concern. You okay? He replied honestly. Learning to be. Loretta entered quietly, carrying coffee. Alexander stood, offering her the chair. Please, sit. She did, handing him a cup. How is he? Alexander exhaled. Stable. Doctors say the anxiety's chronic. Needs ongoing care. His eyes met hers. You knew, she nodded. From experience. But you can fix it now. He leaned forward, voice earnest. I'm rehiring you, not as a maid. As advisor, mentor, whatever you need. And compensation for the pain, the lost work. He wrote a check, sliding it over. Generous, enough to cover her back rent and more. This doesn't erase it, but Loretta took it, folding it carefully. It's a start, but words matter too. By afternoon, agencies called her, offers pouring in, blacklists dissolved. Heard about last night. You're a saint. Loretta smiled faintly, declining most. Not for them. Reporters ambushed her outside. How does it feel to be vindicated? She paused, raincoat hood up. Feels like justice. But it's about the boy, not me. Her dignity shone. The public shaming flipped. Now, she was the hero. Alexander the humbled. Social media buzzed. Loretta saves. Clips of his post going viral. Alexander watched from the hospital, a wry smile breaking. She deserves this. Discharge came that evening. Jake, bandaged but brighter, hugged Loretta tight. Thanks for coming back. She ruffled his hair. Always. Alexander drove them home, the penthouse waiting, cleaned by temp staff but feeling warmer. He helped Jake to bed, tucking him in awkwardly, the gesture foreign but sincere. Alone with Loretta in the kitchen, he faced her. "I minced you publicly. So, publicly, I will fix it." Another post. "Loretta Johnson isn't just staff, she's family. My apologies for the hurt. Grateful beyond words." Shares exploded, vindication complete. Loretta exhaled, the weight lifting. Min Oan, no longer the shamed maid, but the woman who stood tall. Alexander offered his hand. "Truce?" She shook it firmly. "Healing." As she left for her apartment, rent paid, future secure, the city lights seemed kinder. But the real consequence hit Alexander hardest. Mirrors now reflected a changed man, his arrogance shattered, rebuilding from the rubble. Sunlight filtered through the penthouse windows, casting a warm glow over the living room, where Jake sat cross-legged on the rug, sketching in a notebook with focused strokes. Weeks had passed since the rooftop, the storm a fading memory, but its lessons lingered like echoes in the halls. Alexander watched from the armchair, his usual suit traded for a casual sweater, a coffee mug cradled in hands that no longer clenched in control. Loretta moved about the kitchen, preparing lunch, simple sandwiches, fresh fruit. Not as a maid, but as a fixture, her presence weaving into the fabric of their days. The air hummed with quiet normalcy, a far cry from the chaos that had nearly torn them apart. Jake looked up, pencil pausing. "Hey, Loretta, thanks for the art supplies." She smiled from the counter, slicing apples with deliberate care. "Figured you'd like 'em. Drawing helped me after Marcus." Jake nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "Dad's been different." Alexander shifted, clearing his throat. "Trying, son. Therapy's helping." The sessions had become routine, family ones where words flowed freer, walls crumbling. Alexander shared about Rebecca's hidden struggles, his own buried grief. Jake opened up about the anxiety's grip, the fear of weakness. Loretta guided gently, her nursing wisdom a bridge. "Pain shared is pain halved," she'd say, her voice a steady anchor. Outside, the city buzzed on, indifferent to their mending. Alexander rose, joining Loretta at the counter. "You've changed us," he said quietly, no trace of the old arrogance. She set down the knife, meeting his gaze. "You changed yourselves. I just held the mirror." He nodded, the weight of his past actions evident in his softened eyes. Public apologies had rippled, donations to mental health charities in Rebecca's name, a scholarship fund for single mothers, like Loretta once was. His social posts shifted, vulnerability over bravado, empathy over empire. Colleagues whispered of the new Kensington, but he cared little for their opinions now. Power means nothing without heart, he'd realized. The lesson etched deep. Lunch unfolded at the table. No phones, no rush. Jake bit into his sandwich, mustard smearing his chin. "Remember that night?" he asked, voice casual but eyes serious. Alexander paused mid-bite. "Hard to forget." Loretta wiped her hands on a napkin. "Storms pass, but what we learn sticks." Jake grinned faintly. "Like, don't judge people?" Alexander chuckled ruefully. "Yeah, I saw a maid, not a lifesaver. Bias blinded me. Class, color, all of it." Loretta's expression warmed. "And patience heals what pride breaks." The words hung, a quiet moral threading their bond. True strength lies in seeing beyond labels, in choosing empathy over ego. Afternoons brought more shifts. Alexander volunteered at a Brooklyn shelter, his hands unaccustomed to serving trays, but learning humility with each meal dished. "Feels good," he'd admit to Loretta over coffee, his voice laced with wonder. She nodded. "Giving back mends the giver." Jake joined art therapy groups, his sketches evolving from jagged lines to hopeful scenes, a family under a clearing sky. Loretta's apartment, now secure with Alexander's quiet support, became a haven she shared, inviting them for homemade dinners, stories of Marcus filling the air. "He taught me resilience," she'd say, eyes misty. "Like you two are learning." One evening, under the oak tree in Central Park, a spot they'd claimed for walks, the trio sat on a blanket, picnic spread. Jake tossed breadcrumbs to ducks, laughing as they quacked. Alexander leaned back, watching. "I almost lost this." Loretta placed a hand on his arm. "But you didn't. That's the gift." He turned to her. "The lesson? Listen first. Judge never." She smiled. "And stay through the hard parts," Jake chimed in. "Yeah, like family does." The word landed soft, inclusive. No blood ties, but bonds forged in fire. Months blurred into a new rhythm. Alexander's business thrived, but balanced. Family first. He mentored at-risk youth, sharing his story. "I was the villain in my own tale. Change starts with admitting it." Loretta resumed nursing credentials, part-time, her empathy a beacon in pediatric wards. "Healing others heals me," she'd confide. Jake excelled in school, his anxiety managed, sketches exhibited in a local gallery. "Dedicated to the woman who saw me," the plaque read. As fall leaves swirled, they gathered in the penthouse, fire crackling. Alexander raised a glass. "To second chances," Jake clinked. "To listen." Loretta joined, eyes shining. "To see each other. Truly." The moral crystallized. Prejudice divides, but patience unites. Power unchecked destroys, but humility rebuilds. In their laughter, the story closed. Not perfect, but whole. Loretta glanced at Marcus's photo in her wallet, whispering inwardly, "We did good, baby." Outside, the city lights twinkled, a testament to enduring light in darkness. What do you think of Loretta? If you believe she's someone truly special, give her a chance to show your support. And don't forget to share where you're watching this video from. Who knows? Someone right near you might be watching it too. In the end, this story reminds us that true strength lies not in power or prejudice, but in empathy, patience, and the courage to see beyond labels, proving that healing begins when we choose to listen and stay, no matter the storm. What about you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed or experienced a moment where kindness triumphed over injustice? Your stories inspire us all. Thank you for watching and joining this journey. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. See you in the next video.